Last hour of your Thursday second down show.
First hour's the last hour.
Welcome
you know
to
what?
the show.
I'm glad 3 and Out intro music played because it's got that southern kind of college football feeling to it.
Okay.
Let's do this first because our intro does put this. This is Second Down, presented to you by the Uniform Source. 2 different locations in Savannah take care of all your uniform needs. I want to know who planted 3 and Out's intro into our folder. But that being said, PJ, do you know what today's date signifies?
For the first time ever, I do.
Hit me with it.
We're 100 days.
From?
Or under 100 days from college football being back. The first full weekend, opening weekend, college football.
You used so many words there when like 5 would suffice.
Yeah, no, so many. That's kind of my thing.
We're 100 days away from week 1 of college football.
There you go.
We're 93 days away from
the first game.
The opening, like week 0.
See, that's the thing. And yeah.
That's
why I kind of got caught up in that.
You're a week 0 denier.
Well, put a real game on week 0 and I'll be fine.
But at that point, does it become week 1?
Am I a week 0 denier? I feel like I've said week 0 several times.
I'm not saying you haven't
Whether
said
it be
week
college
0.
football or
I'm
high
saying
school
every
football.
time someone says week 0, you're like,
kind of, yeah. I mean, because it should just be week 1. Especially in high school football.
But
now, I know we're talking about 2 differences.
At what point do the scheduling prowess of these people allow them to just continually move back what week 1 actually is?
I think you draw the line there.
Where do you draw the line?
Where we're at right now. Are we talking about high school football or college football
Both.
now? You draw the line where it needs to be drawn.
What? Well, we're 100
days away. You can't have
away
17 bye weeks, man.
From week 1 of college football. 93 days away from college football. So you always get that teaser week.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good way to put it. And I would even say that, I would even say that like week 0 in college football does make sense because it's 3 or 4 games. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but most times you know the outcome of what said game is going to be. It's not like we're having a top 5 matchup on week 0 of college football. I disagree with it, and I say that all the time and roll my eyes in high school football because week 0 you have there's 5 teams that around the state of Georgia that aren't playing high school football on week 0. So that's why I'm like, okay, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. You just have another bye week, and this is week 1. But for college football, it still makes sense because there's 3 games. They're not great. So
I guess there's 10 FBS games.
Okay.
But I'll say this, we're 98 days away from the actual start of week 1 because it starts on a Thursday.
That's why I was trying to
You know what game that is?
I just saw it.
To start to really start week 1 of college football, we have the most college football-y game that we could have.
Is that?
Do you want to guess?
I can't remember is that the Arkansas game?
West Virginia Pitt.
Oh, okay.
So you have West Virginia traveling to take on Pitt for the 105th time in that series.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them with a different USC quarterback at the helm.
It's incredible. Yeah.
So Kedon Slovis, who replaced an injured JT Daniels many years ago at USC, is now the quarterback at Pitt. And the aforementioned JT Daniels, who after getting hurt and replaced by Kedon Slovis, transferred to Georgia, won that job for about a half a year during COVID, is now the quarterback at West Virginia.
Yep.
What a ride for JT Daniels, number 1.
I think, you know how a few weeks ago you asked me what the hardest job in sports was?
Tell me.
And we started talking about blocking and Ndamukong, stuff like that. It's trying to keep up with USC quarterbacks.
I think I'd still rather try to keep up with USC quarterbacks than block and Ndamukong.
I don't know. Because they're all over the place, man. And this hasn't been a 1 or 2 year thing. This is constant. But anyway, no, back to your point about that game especially. And I love that because it's like a rivalry within a rivalry. A lot of people not from around the area or whatever forget that Pitt, West Virginia, that was a great old school type of rivalry.
Terrible uniform game.
Sure. It's getting a little better. Like, I like the Pitt move to the royal blue and
it's still a terrible uniform.
The yellow, but yeah. No, it's really bad when it comes to that. Do you think that's why it's a rivalry? You know, like, not only are we close.
Yellow. No, I'm blue and yellow.
Not only are we close in like our universities are close, but also you literally chose the same color as me.
Probably.
Those are fighting words.
But has there ever been a football season that needs to get here faster just for the sake of the sport? Because we have I don't know if I remember an off season, maybe throw COVID in there where it's just the uncertainty of whether or not you were going to play. But I don't know if I remember an off season where so much talk around the sport has not actually been on what we're going to see when we get to the field on Saturdays.
It's a very good point. Yeah.
So, I mean, just recap what's kind of happened this offseason. You had, it's really the second signing day now, but at the culmination of that, Texas A&M being the number 1 overall recruiting class, the first time NIL ever played a significant role inside of recruiting, right? Say what you will about whether or not that should be the case. You had Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma to take over the head coaching position at USC. And then Caleb Williams, his star quarterback who replaced his other star quarterback who's now at South Carolina, followed him to USC, excuse me. Right? You had Mario Williams, was his big-time freshman receiver at Oklahoma, follow to USC, right? Also during this time, we get rumblings coming out of South Bend that Brian Kelly, who is currently the winningest coach in college football, winningest coach in Notre Dame history, is moving to LSU. LSU, just, I'm your daddy, Notre Dame, for their head coach, because that's how big the SEC is. That's how big them paychecks are, right? Brian Kelly on that, what I would imagine is like a 4 or 5 hour flight. Can't be much more than that, right?
Can't imagine, no.
Developed a Southern drawl. A little bit my family, right? So during that, like, huge signing, Brian Kelly gets a Southern accent on his way down from South Bend. Within a couple weeks, he's grinding on recruits, but that's a different thing. Also during this offseason, you have Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher going after each other. Meanwhile, in the background, Lincoln Riley's laughing because he's still in the number 1 receiver in the country from Pitt.
Mm-hmm.
This is the modern world of college football. But at the same time, you know who's sitting there and nobody's saying a lick about him?
A lot of coaches, actually.
The defending national champions.
Yeah. Very true.
Are just kind of quietly sitting in Athens in their new $80 million upgraded facility. Nice, too.
I'm sure.
It's nice.
I hope so.
Yeah, they're sitting there in their new facility, kind of shaking their heads. Everybody forgot about me. But they get to open the season against a familiar foe in Bo Nix. But they don't open with Auburn. They're opening with Oregon because Bo took his talents to the West Coast. It's just, if I said all of this to a group of people who had no idea what college football was, they'd lock me in a mental institution. I'm like the guy from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, like pointing at the board with all the red yarn.
Charlie Day, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, it's craziness.
It is.
Why can't we just talk about who's good? The reason is we don't know if the player that makes them good is still going to be on the team tomorrow.
Exactly. I think that's a really good point. I think the way you say that's very good too, because we've had crazy off seasons before. I mean, last off season we were sitting here talking about pods around this time. Well, about a month or two from now, last year.
Yeah, so like
they're talking about Texas and Oklahoma
SEC media, or during the middle of SEC media days. Yeah, that breaks down.
Yeah, you're talking about Texas and Oklahoma and pods, and how quick is that going to happen? Is this happening tomorrow, or is that happening for years from now? We're going to have playoff discussions and votings throughout the year, blah, blah, blah. We're talking about that stuff. But all of that, at very least, has to do with teams that are going to be playing each other, teams that could potentially be in the same conference moving forward, how they're going to structure that, blah, blah, blah. It had to do with college football, and it had to do with college football that was played on the field. But like you just said, all of that you articulated is not only it's money moving around, it's players moving around, it's he said, she said stuff. It's like some of it, honestly, reminds me of like rumors you hear in middle school. You get all mad about.
Hey,
yeah, what Tommy say about whatever? Like, yeah, that.
Damn,
I can't believe that.
Brian Kelly right there.
I did. I went Brian Kelly, but also kind of remind me of Jimbo. It's like Brian Kelly impersonating Jimbo Fisher, and how they talk
Jimbo
about
Fisher
our
has one of the more difficult.
Yeah, I'm never gonna try that. Yeah, no, he's
because you gotta get back in the throw a little bit, and you gotta get down home a little bit, and you gotta get real upset.
But no, I mean you're right. You're right, and even like I'd lump in there those early years in the 2010s when you had all that movement, right? People going to the ACC, moving out of the ACC, going to the Big Ten. Missouri and
Texas
A&M coming to the SEC.
Which,
and whatnot.
Fun fact about that, as we like talked about pods and all that.
Yeah.
So Missouri and Texas A&M joined the SEC. Like, this is Johnny Manziel time, right? You have them going into Tuscaloosa, the Johnny Manziel like fumble into the air, catch it, throw a touchdown moment.
Yeah.
You know, Georgia still hasn't played at Kyle Field.
Yeah, no,
and they won't until next year.
Right.
If the realignment doesn't happen.
Yeah, if it stays this way, right? It's crazy.
That's wild. I know they've been talking about this on 3 and Out, but it's like, what current rivalry do you sacrifice because you're not going to be able to keep all of them once Oklahoma and Texas get into the conference?
Yeah, I don't know. Because obviously, I mean, SEC's chock full of them, right?
So,
but no, it's crazy. I would agree with you, though. I can't wait to actually be talking about football once again. And like you said, a lot of like you have said, a lot of these people that take issue with a lot of the things that are going on with NIL and whatnot. And
it's amazing how the storylines just go away.
They're going to be sitting in front of their TV on Saturday. Yep.
There's all the worry about college football ending and the doom and gloom. As soon as that first ball gets kicked off, everyone's fine. And we're just talking about how awesome these players are. And you're complaining about your team because their run defense isn't good and all kinds of stuff. So what we're going to do, we're going to come back 100 days until week 1 of college football, until you get to see your team kick it off, unless your team's playing week 0. And if they are, hey, congrats. You get there 7 days before the rest of us. But that being said, we're going to come back. We kind of recapped a little bit how wild this offseason is going to be. We're going to kind of try to grab the wheel, turn it over a little bit, and we're just going to take a gander at what's coming down the line, because this is going to be an awesome college football season, I think, for a lot of different reasons. So we'll come back. We'll talk about what to look forward to coming up in 2022. SEC Media Days not far away, PJ. They're going to meet next week in Destin for their coaches meetings. But coming up, I believe the 18th to the 21st of July, SEC Media Days. And that's basically the kickoff of college football season.
That's it.
So it's coming down the track. We're going to take a look at what you should expect inside of this college football season coming up in 2022, because I think the storyline that is the same old, I think there might be a couple teams that can kind of turn it on its head. I'll let PJ decide. We'll do that when we come back. This is Second Down on ESPN Radio. PJ, we're going to gaze into the old crystal ball here.
Oh, man.
You ready?
Yeah, it's my favorite thing to do.
We had some breaking news. Not really breaking. Like the information was out there. It just took us realizing it in the break. You don't have to wait 100 days.
No, that's true.
You're 98 days away from your team kicking it off.
I thought it sounded familiar, but with that old trade.
Yeah,
that old trade.
Yeah, the Joe Buck fallout.
That's it. Penn State moved up a little bit, playing Purdue.
That's exciting for you. That's exciting for you. Starts on a Thursday, so you get to consume an awesome Saturday of college football with no worries.
It's either it's one of two things.
Hey. How's that a bad take, Kevin?
Yeah.
So Kevin hates Thursday college football?
I don't hate I'm not completely with Kevin, but this is the thing. Yes, it gets it out of the way, sure.
That's an evergreen statement.
But it also sets a tone for my weekend.
That's true.
Yeah. So either Sean Clifford goes out there and throws 4 interceptions and, Penn State loses and gets upset by Purdue. I don't even know if it's an upset at this point. But loses to Purdue.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing old Adrian O'Connell out there.
Yeah, and just sets the tone of the weekend of just, wow, we just started our season and we're already 0-1. Or Sean Clifford throws 3 interceptions and we sneak out a victory on the road at Purdue. So,
I have an interesting theoretical.
Either way,
I have an interesting theoretical for you. I tell you before the game,
or the Indiana thing.
I tell you before the game, not the score, but just
that.
like 2 different stats. You can choose which one.
Okay.
Sean Clifford throws 2 interceptions, or Sean Clifford throws for 358 yards. Which one are you taking? Like, which one do you think leads to Penn State actually winning the game?
Probably the 2 picks.
That's what I was thinking too. Yeah.
Probably the 2 picks.
Yeah.
Although, probably the 2 picks.
Because if Sean Clifford's throwing for 358 yards, it means you're down. And also he's doing a lot of damage between the 20s.
Everyone remembers the controversial ending to the Indiana game to start 2020, right?
Yeah.
In that game.
Michael Penix.
Yeah. In that game, Sean Clifford, which again, my problem is not with Indiana, it's with the refs. Sean Clifford in that game threw for like 200 yards, a couple touchdowns through the air, and ran for $150 and a touchdown, I believe. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
So, if Sean Clifford has to do everything, we're not going to.
But what I'm telling you is, so think about it. If you were going to play a Thursday game, the opening weekend is the best weekend to do that because you have the whole offseason to get ready for it. You don't have like a short week to get ready for a Thursday, right? So if you're going to play a Thursday game, opening weekend is the best weekend to do that. Plus, you get to watch the game on Thursday. Your team plays. They're going to win. We're just putting it out there in the universe. Crystal ball, boop, Penn State wins. You get to watch, go out and do a broadcast on Friday, knowing your team's 1-0, right? Come back on Saturday, and you don't have to do rip, but come in here with the back 9 boys and then go home and consume just an entire weekend of college football, knowing your team's 1-0. You get to listen to the podcast because you don't have to avoid those. You can watch SportsCenter because you don't have to avoid that, right? You watch Game Day and they might show a couple like 30-second highlights from your game. You get to enjoy the full spectacle and with the knowledge your team won.
I'm okay with it.
All right.
I'm okay with it. That's probably the most you're going to get out of me. Fair. It's not what I would wish because, I mean, I do, like, I want to start college football on a Saturday, especially for my team. If it's Saturday night, as we've spoken about before, to me, that's kind of a fantastic day and time. That's like the perfect college football time of day for me. I love it.
Sure.
Then again, there is an upside to, especially with this opening weekend, because goodness gracious, how many incredible matchups we have, especially on Saturday. At the very least, I don't have to wait. I don't have to focus on our game at all. You do have a point there.
Listen, I'm a Georgia fan, and I can tell you, I don't remember any game that got played opening weekend except for Georgia Clemson. Just because like the anxiety. I'll take that back. I do remember Penn State, Wisconsin.
See that?
Because that was an awesome game. And that was a noon kick.
Exactly. I remember that clear as day. I will say I remember watching Georgia Clemson too, because that Penn State.
Because you were happy.
Well, yeah, but no, not only that, but like it's the tone of the game too. It's hilarious. I watched Penn State, Wisconsin, and I expected a low scoring game, and that's what we got. It was literally 0-0 at halftime. You were not expecting
a Big Ten West game to break out?
No. I was expecting Yeah, I was not expecting a high scoring game, and that's not what we got.
No, I'm talking about in the Georgia Clemson. You were not expecting a Big Ten West game to break out.
I was like, all right, let's do this. Here's the points. Here's the offense. Nope.
All right. So anyway, gazing back into the crystal ball.
Yeah, we went opposite direction.
We really did. That's okay. We love reminiscing here. I'm gonna let you know that something's gonna happen this year that hasn't happened in a long time.
Okay. All right.
A defensive player is going to win the Heisman Trophy.
Really? Which one?
Will Anderson.
Yeah.
He should have maybe won it last year. Because we've talked about this. Aiden Hutchinson finished second in the Heisman Trophy voting to Will Anderson's teammate, Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Right?
I'll say at very least, if Hutchinson was there, Anderson should have been there too.
Correct.
Should have been a finalist.
And Will Anderson had twice as many tackles for loss.
Right.
And I think, I want to say Aiden Hutchinson had like 12 sacks and Will Anderson had like 17 and a half and over 30 tackles for loss.
Yeah. It was crazy.
Right. Will Anderson, it is my opinion, is going to win the Heisman Trophy. Now, let me tell you why. I think there's a couple different reasons. Number one, he has the offseason hype, right? He has enough buildup going into this season that he can win it. You're like, Bryce Young never started a game before last season. He won the Heisman. Right, but what were we talking about at SEC Media Days? Bryce Young has $1 million of endorsements already from NIL.
Yep.
And that's before he had taken a snap as a starting quarterback. Going back to 2020, we were talking to Brooks Austin from Dogs Daily about him. He was like, dude, this Bryce Young dude is legit. Like, he might be the quarterback for Alabama midway through the season. Obviously, Mac Jones leads Alabama to a national championship, but we've known about Bryce Young, and you're the quarterback at Alabama, you have the hype.
Yeah.
But I think coming in as if you look at any of the preseason, graphics from all of these different outlets, Will Anderson's always one of the people on that because he's that good. Like Von Miller, Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney level good. And star power, right? Which it takes a lot for that to happen, being an Alabama defensive lineman, just because we get the Alabama defensive lineman fatigue. You forget about just how many amazing NFL caliber guys have come through there. But in that same breath, I believe Will Anderson and Alabama have a good enough schedule that he's going to have a chance for his Heisman moments. So let's look at the Crimson Tide, who I believe is going to win the national championship. That's not a hot take.
No.
But I believe this Alabama team is just too good to be stopped. They start the season against Utah State, but then the very next week, they're at Texas.
Yeah.
And that's the big noon Saturday, 11 a.m. local kick. But that's going to be on Fox. Will Anderson against Texas. And Brother Quinn Ewers, you came back from Ohio State to be the quarterback at Texas. Your season might start after this game because it is certainly not going to start during it. So you have that Texas game where you're going to have all the eyes of the country on Texas. A couple weeks later, you're at Arkansas. I think that's a big enough game against a good enough quarterback, KJ Jefferson, to where you can have your moments. I mean, that's a big old quarterback, and Arkansas is going to be a good team, right? The very next week, you host Texas A&M. And if you don't think the eyes of college football are going to be on that game, you are out of your mind. And so if you can kind of defend Nick Saban's honor, just eviscerate Texas A&M, this is where I think the snowball effect starts to happen. Next week, you're at Tennessee. Tennessee's a really good football team.
Yeah.
Third Saturday in October, right? They're probably going to wear some funky uniforms, whether the black ones or the Smoky Mountain uniform, something like that. I wish they would just wear the traditional uniforms because you know how I feel about traditional uniforms in rivalry games. But Will Anderson against Hendon Hooker in this Josh Heupel offense, if he can come out and do something freaky, you just keep it rolling. Then you go.
That's the thing. And you talk about that. Like, if they're as good as we think they're going to be, by then, they're 4-5-0 possibly already. Yeah. And that hype around Hooker is really starting to build up too. If you silence that could be huge for his case. Then
you go Mississippi State at LSU, at Ole Miss, Austin Peay's in there, and then you finish against Auburn. But Auburn, by that point in the season, it doesn't matter what their record is. We saw it last year. They were a 5-loss team coming out of that game, and they took it down to the wire. It's the Iron Bowl, right? If he can come out against Auburn in the Iron Bowl with some sacks like he did last year, I mean, go back to the first drive of the Iron Bowl last year with Willie Anderson. Dude is filthy.
Yeah, he's going to be looking to feast.
So you'll have that full regular season, probably another appearance against Georgia in the SEC championship, and go back and watch Will Anderson either in the national championship or the SEC championship, whichever one you want to watch. Just watch 31. So I know there's a lot of Georgia fans out there that have rewatched this game a multitude of times. Mm-hmm. Go watch what 31 does. Georgia was completely moving their offense away from him.
Yep.
Because he's that good. So it's my humble opinion, a defender is going to win the Heisman Trophy next season. Just because Bryce Young can have the same season he had last year, you talk about fatigue.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that would be my argument. Like, as fatigued as we are on Alabama linebackers, I think we're that way with a lot of other players and positions on the Alabama team as well. So, and we've seen that not only with Bryce Young coming up, but with other players, of course, how extremely hard it is to win a second Heisman. We've seen even players win a Heisman, come back to school, have a better season, and still not win the Heisman that next year, even though maybe they should have, because, well, they won it last year, and people just want to see a new Heisman. It's just, it is what it is, good or bad or wrong or whatever. So, like you said, Bryce Young could come out and have the same season next year, and he'd probably get looked down upon saying, well, I don't know, he's not really improving, but this Will Anderson cat, he's still a monster. And we'll see, but I think that would be rather refreshing. I'm at the point that, like, even though it was an Alabama player, I was Devontae Smith when he was able to win it. I was insanely refreshed by that because it wasn't just another quarterback.
Yep.
So I would love to see a defensive player win. I think several have kind of deserved it. Just you look the past 20, 25 years, I bet you can name 3 or 4 that could have been finalists, could have even been winners of it.
My boy Josh Allen should have been in New York. I'm not saying he should have won it, but he should have been there.
Right. So I hope we get that sort of respect for Will Anderson if he's able to, if not have the same year as last year, have an even better year than last year. I don't think there's any doubt.
And I'll round out the rest of the room, like who you'll expect to see in New York. I think CJ Stroud and Bryce Young will both be there. And I think either Jordan Addison or Caleb Williams will be there because I think they're going to put up stupid numbers. But what I think could be interesting is I think Dylan Gabriel, the Oklahoma quarterback, could have a better year than both of them. And how interesting would it be to see an Oklahoma quarterback go to New York and neither Caleb Williams or Jordan Addison? I think that would be fascinating. And a dark horse I'll give you, Anthony Richardson.
Okay, yeah.
He was a baby last year.
Yeah.
It's a really big baby, like ginormous.
Mm-hmm.
But the dude's a freak.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be that big and tall and be able to run a 4.4 like that.
Right.
I mean, there's a couple plays last year where you're like, that's not supposed to happen. Right. And it was the middle of turmoil, a team quitting on their head coach. And he gets kind of thrown into the fire against the best defense we've seen in at least 20 years. Right. And doesn't have a great game against Georgia. Not many quarterbacks not named Bryce Young had a good game against Georgia last year, right? So I'm not holding that against Anthony Richardson. Plus, I think a full offseason as the number one in an offense that caters to him,
right?
Like Billy Napier's offense does.
Mm-hmm.
You watch some of his play calling from Louisiana. Imagine Anthony Richardson's talent in that. I think Anthony Richardson could have a really, really, really special kind of season, and Florida could still lose 4 games.
Yeah.
Just because it's the first year roster turnover and all that. But at the same time, if anything would keep him out, it would be his team's record.
Yeah.
But I think Anthony Richardson is going to be really good. And by the end of it, we'll probably be talking about him in the top 3 in terms of quarterbacks in the SEC.
Right. Not for sure. I think that to counter that a little bit, I guess I think we have seen if you have a good enough year, in some years, you can get up there and get some real Heisman contention. Yeah, we've seen it with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Robert Griffin III.
Those seasons were silly.
No, well, they were just undeniable. But that's the
kind
of.
Did RG3 play in his conference? No, they didn't have a conference.
They didn't. Yeah, they didn't have one. I think the year he won the Heisman, they played in like the Alamo Bowl or something. So, if you have a good enough year, they will look at you like that, but you have to have a spectacular
year. You have to
year.
have a Lamar Jackson year.
That offense, I can't wait to see if it hits, man. Because if it does, I think the projections and what could happen is through the ceiling.
Well,
like I think
it'd be a way to start the season.
Amazing, yeah, exactly, against
the
Utah and that defense,
Utah. Yeah,
for sure. Although that defense did have a couple very notable players graduate from it, but
one of them now resides in Jacksonville.
Exactly. Yeah. But at the same time could hit and could be extremely good. The thing that makes me hesitant about him, and it's weird, this probably shouldn't be happening with me, but it's like last year, who was that guy? It was DJU. And that offense sputtered all year. So maybe it's just because of that I'm a little hesitant with Richardson.
Well, you know
as
why that offense sputtered.
So
it's not because they lost Trevor Lawrence.
That's because they lost Travis Etienne.
That's correct.
Yeah, no, for sure. It was a bit.
And name a running back right now that plays for Clemson.
Yeah, no, I can't.
Exactly.
So, it's all DJU right now. So now I'm with you there.
Klubnik.
If that hits, but I do love the fact that you brought up Dillon Gabriel, because I feel like with all this movement and with all the star power everywhere, and just with his situation, going from UCF to Oklahoma, I believe,
after almost
struggling,
dying.
Yeah, struggling with the injuries really severely. And now it's the same, although I will say that it's the same argument as it is with Richardson down in Florida, is new offense, new coach, and a defensive-minded head coach as well. So you have to get incredible, I think, production and an incredible mind with that offensive coordinator, and you have to have a good relationship with the quarterback as well there. But if it does hit, that could be a guy that just blows away college football and the Big 12 and those defenses. I think that could be an incredible to watch. The one guy you didn't mention that I will mention that I think a lot of people will kind of roll their eyes at me for, but it is what it is, because I think they view it as it's either CJ Stroud or him being a finalist and being in contention. But Smith-Njigba could very easily be a finalist for the Heisman if he can blow up like he did throughout the year last year, especially at the end of the season.
It's interesting. It's definitely an offense that caters towards high stats for quarterbacks, so we will have to see. We got more to come here on Second Down. Continue the conversation next. If you want to join the conversation, 912-342-7184, or you can always reach out to us on Twitter at ESPN Coastal, or drop a comment in the live stream. We got more to come after this. This is Second Down on ESPN Radio. Christian Gokel alongside PJ Zuko. All right. So I told you I think there's some teams I can kind of shake it up a little bit this year in terms of the college football playoff. Last year, for the first time ever, we had a G5 team make it into the college football playoff at Cincinnati. Went undefeated, took on Alabama there. But, PJ, I don't know, looking at it, that there is a G5 team that's good enough this season to make it.
Understandably so.
I mean, Coastal Carolina, I think, kind of missed their window. You do get Grayson McCall back. I just don't know that they have the talent or the schedule.
Yeah.
Because they typically do some pretty weak scheduling. I know we talked about that last year. I just don't know if they have the schedule to do it. So I'm looking, I'm like, all right, who are some teams that can make that first appearance? And I know there's a couple of names that have been thrown out there, like a Texas A&M. I don't buy it. I understand all the offseason hype about Texas A&M because of Jimbo Fisher, because of the number 1 overall class, but also they were an 8-4 team last year.
Yep.
And it took Alabama playing a pretty meh game and them playing the game of their lives to kick a walk-off field goal to beat Alabama.
Agreed.
Right?
Yep.
So that being said, I think there's a few teams that you should watch out for. At the end of the season, if it's Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, and what?
Take your pick. I mean, probably maybe a Clemson. You know, I don't know if
an undefeated ACC winner.
Yeah. I don't know if any of the other ACC teams are good enough this year to.
That's where you bring me to my point.
Stump Clemson.
Yeah. That's where you bring me here to my point.
Okay.
Because one of the teams that I'll throw out there is one of the ones I think can make the playoff this year. Miami.
Right. Yeah.
First year coach Mario Cristobal comes in from Oregon. Dude knows how to build a program.
Mm-hmm.
Also comes from that Nick Saban tree of coaching and has fully embraced the NIL and the transfer portal down there. And I think he's turning Miami into quietly a little powerhouse down in Florida, right?
Yep.
Their schedule is why I believe they can make it to the college football playoff. Couple things here. They have some key dates. The first 2 games of their schedule, easy. Bethune-Cookman, Southern Miss. Should move through that pretty easily, right?
Mm-hmm.
Week 3, they're at Texas A&M. I think all things are even here. Texas A&M probably has a better roster instead of blue chips, but Miami's older. Most of Texas A&M's blue chips are babies, or freshmen, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think when everything being even, you go to, okay, who's the quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be for Texas A&M. They got some transfers in, right? We know Tyler Van Dyke's the quarterback for Miami, and we know that dude can sling it.
Yeah.
Right? Came in last year and was just 300 yards a game, 300 yards a game, 300 yards a game. I think Miami probably wins that game at Texas A&M. And if you do that, boop, feather in the cap.
Yep.
Right? You already got that in terms of when you get to week 8, when they do the first college football playoff rankings, right? You have that in there. You're 3-0. You're moving on to Middle Tennessee State. After that, you have a North Carolina team that's rebuilding. You have a Virginia Tech team with the first-year head coach.
Wow.
Duke's going to be weak, right?
Yeah.
Virginia, first-year head coach there, and Tony Elliott. Then you're hosting Florida State. You should win that football game.
You should. You should. You mentioned Virginia. I don't know if I'd skim over them too quickly with Armstrong there at quarterback.
Just because
that could be a shootout. No, I mean, but Armstrong was really solid last year.
But the rest of that team is so bad.
Yeah. It could, I'm just saying, you could have one of those games where he just plays out of his mind and keeps Virginia in the game.
Yeah.
And you know, Miami.
You're looking ahead to Florida State.
Hopefully they fix this problem with Mario Cristobal, but Miami has this history of starting off these years that you're starting to talk about. They get a big upset win, whatever.
Were they number 3 when they got just smacked?
It was bad. Yeah.
Okay. That being said,
anyway,
Florida State, I think you should win that game. And I think that one is the Friday after Thanksgiving. I could be wrong about that. We'll double check. That being said, Georgia Tech, not going to be a good football team next year. And then the last game that I think is really the biggest hurdle for them, at Clemson.
Yeah.
But we don't know what Clemson's going to be.
Is that their last game of the year?
No, Pitt is the last game of the season.
Gotcha.
And that was the joke I was eventually going to get to, is how ACC would it be to have an upstart team start off 11-0, and then the last game on the schedule is Pitt.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
And you know what the score of that game is going to be, right? It's going to be like 46-46, and Pitt's going to hit like an 87-yard walk-off field goal.
Well, it's either that. I mean, which Pitt do you get? It's either going to be like 49-46, or it's going to be 13-9.
It's true.
And Pitt's going to win. But now that Miami-Florida State game is November 5th. So
not on Thanksgiving. All right, never mind.
Still, though.
Leave me alone.
No. Still, though, I think you do have a really good point. And I didn't know the schedule. Like, I knew the schedule probably wasn't stacked for Miami, right? Because it's the ACC, and it's that side of the ACC that they never really know what they are, right? Are they all really good, or are they all really bad?
Okay, well, two more teams, because we got to get to it quick.
Okay.
We got to go to break. Two more teams that I think could potentially find their way into the college football playoff. Again, these couple teams would probably have to go undefeated if they were going to do it. Utah.
Yep.
They start the season at Florida, but I think they're probably the best team in the Pac-12 by a pretty big margin, and they have all the key games that they need on there. They play the USCs, the Stanfords, and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So they have the marquee games. I think Utah could find their way in as the 4th seed, and I'm going to say it, and don't get mad at me. Wisconsin. I said it. I'm going to put it out there.
Fine.
I think they probably they have the most returning defensive production, which of course it seems like they do every year.
Yep.
I don't know how they do it.
Yep.
And they, for whatever reason, I got a sneaky suspicion about Wisconsin this year. We got to take a break.
Find a quarterback, just like every year.
I know I'm over. We got to take a break. We'll come back, get you ready for 3 and Out next. Surprising things that we learn every day. Kevin Thomas loves Oasis.
Yeah.
Actually, that's not surprising because one of his children was singing Wonderwall the other day.
That's true.
Which that's just a good way to get your kid beat up at a high school party. He's like the guy sitting there with the guitar and he's like just singing Wonderwall. Like, baby, gonna be the one that said. Teach you some AC/DC, Kevin. They know that.
Who says they don't
safe.
know?
They're
Yeah,
safe.
that's for sure.
They're safe.
Let's be honest. As long as you're not singing it at a guitar with a guitar at a party, Wonderwall's a great song. So that's just
I can take it or
this
leave
kid
it.
having great taste in music.
I can take
that doesn't also mean that they're an Oasis fan. It just means you like the song.
Kevin Thomas with the Oasis slaps.
Want to talk about surprising things? I didn't know he could sing it that. I didn't know Kevin could sing "Don't Look Back in Anger" that well, but he did.
He did.
Anyway,
I think that's the song of the offseason for Oklahoma fans.
We'll see.
Anyway, 3 and Out coming up next. Kevin Thomas and Ben Troop. They're going to catch up with D. Orlando Ledbetter from the AJC. Talk about the Deion Jones news. All that coming up next right here on ESPN Radio.
Actually, 3